Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the United District YouTube channel. And today we're going to be looking into the upcoming Premier League season. We're going to be doing a preview about our thoughts on Manchester United going into the season and also some predictions from each of us, which will probably end up being wrong. I'm joined by Yusuf, Nick, and Shez as we're looking to take a look at all of this. And first of all, we're going to be looking at the new signings. Of course, we've signed Mason Mount, Andre Onana, and Rasmus Hojlund, although he will not be available at the start of the season. But it's three good signings. Yusuf, I'll start with you. What have you made of Mason Mount? Of course, we signed him early in pre-season, so we've got to have a good look at him so far. So what are your initial thoughts on the signing?
I think I've got very mixed thoughts on Mount because I think he's a really good player. He brings a lot of things to the Hag wants in that he perceives space really well. He's a really hard worker, wins his duels. But I was also unsure he was the kind of right profile of midfielder for us. So I know Ten Hag wants a kind of 4-3-3 with higher rates, but I think you still need one of the eights to be a bit more comfortable dropping into the first base, supporting Casemiro, and I'm just not sure how much that is Mount's game. And I'd be happy to prove him wrong on it. But yeah, I've got very mixed feelings on it. And in pre-season, I thought at times he was playing a bit too high. I thought we were struggling to play out on occasion because of that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with the kind of point that he didn't, when we bought him, it didn't seem like the initial kind of midfield profile that Ten Hag necessarily like would have went for last season. Like we were looking for Frankie de Jong, but yeah, as well, I think there's been some positives. I mean, definitely he's an upgrade on Ericsson. I think that's kind of agreed within the fan base. But yeah, Nick. So what else do you reckon he brings? What kind of things do you reckon he brings other than Ericsson? Maybe things that he offers that are better, and maybe something that Ericsson has that Mount might not bring. What do you reckon are the difference between the two profiles?
I think the most obvious and clear difference, and I think why Ten Hag wanted him to begin with, is the physical capabilities, the differences in his running, in his pressing ability, in better strength as well. I'd say I think in those ways, Ten Hag looked at him and thought, here's a midfielder that I can bring and I can try and mold him a little bit. Because when you think about when Mason Mount's been at his best, you'd probably say it was under Thomas Tuchel. Now under Tuchel, he played as one of the two on the either side of the striker, so he was a lot higher up the pitch. He didn't really have any defensive duties as such. He was allowed to be free, kind of played in those half spaces. You're now asking him to play in a deeper role, which he has before as well. It's not to say he's never played there, but I'm just saying I think where he's played best is higher up the pitch. So I think it's going to take a little bit of time for him to adapt. But like I say, yeah, it's the off the ball ability that is much better than Ericsson. We saw so many games last season where, as much as I love Ericsson and his ability on the ball, off the ball, he can be so frustrating because he just doesn't really bring anything defensively. So yeah, I think his off the ball work is why Ten Hag wanted him, and that's what he's going to bring much more of in compared to Christian Eriksen.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, there's definitely some contrast in views on Mount, but I think there's going to be a lot more of well-rounded praise for the next player I'm going to speak about, and that's Andre Onana. I mean, I think we can all agree that he is an upgrade on David De Gea, and he's probably the biggest. That it's probably the biggest change in profile from one player to another in any transfer this season. I think just because of the huge change. Onana's one side, De Gea's the other. Shez, what can you say about Andre Onana, and how much do you think he'll actually help United improve in the upcoming season?
So with Onana, I just feel like I've always said this, it's like a transformative signing. Like it takes us from, being at one level and it takes us to, a level higher. So with Onana, it's just like, we had someone with a complete opposite, like we mentioned with David De Gea, and you can just tell by like his overall, just the way he is on the pitch. I don't want to say aura in it, but like that's what he has like on the pitch. Like the way he just carries the ball at times. Like he just steps up with the ball and almost drops into like the central centre back role, and allows like Martinez to step into midfield and things like that. So I feel like It's just a massive signing, and it's a position that we obviously needed to address for a very long time. And yeah, like, I'm super excited because from what we've seen so far in pre-season, I mean, them balls over the top to Rashford we've seen a few times. Like just the way he's just splitting defenses at times with his passes. Yeah, like I mean, so far I mean it's good signs, man. So I'm really excited.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, there's been some really like impressive moments in pre-season, but there's also been a few kind of hiccups where you can kind of tell that United need to adjust to him and he needs to adjust to United a little bit. I mean, I think there was the ball over the top when Wan-Bissaka might have been keeping him on against Real Madrid, but the main point was kind of it was a high line, not exactly in line, and Onana kind of wasn't in complete communication with his defenders at that point. So I'll move on to you, Nick, again. How long do you think it will take for United to kind of completely adapt to the way he plays? Of course, there will be huge benefits, I think, straight away. But how long do you reckon it will take for the kind of the little things to click for Onana and United?
It's a tough one to put your finger on and sort of try to say exactly how long that will take. I think not too long, to be honest. I really, really don't. I think the main thing for Man United, well, for Onana to figure out and for his defenders to figure out for him to fit in is the gap that's left between them. We're obviously going to be playing a lot higher up now. What you now need to perfect, what they need to perfect is, okay, Lisandro Martinez are going to be pushing up a little bit more now. Varane's going to be covering. How big is the distance between Varane and Onana? Because if it's too big, you get exploited. If it's too small, then you can also get exploited with we saw him get lobbed. Obviously, it's a different scenario because we gave the ball away. But I think it's just that gap, perfecting that gap and always knowing that Onana is where he is without even having to look around to know where he is. But honestly, I don't think it's going to take a long time for him to adapt. I also think with Onana, and it sort of touches on what was just said about his aura, he has got that personality where even if a mistake happens, the next game is gone. Even within the next 10 minutes, I reckon it's gone. He's got that about him, which I think for a goalkeeper at Man United is so critical because if you make a mistake and you've got 75,000 people on you, that can really get the better of you. Whereas I think Onana, he's got the personality, he can puff out his chest and still go and do an interview afterwards like it's nothing. So yeah, I don't think him fitting in is going to be a problem this season.
Yeah, definitely. And also, I think it was quite useful to get him in pre-season. I mean, he didn't come as soon as Mount because obviously we had to wait for the final decision on De Gea. But getting him in for that 3-4 weeks before the Premier League actually begins, I think that is going to be huge. Because, like I said, it's such a difference in profile, such a big difference in where he stands in build up, where he comes out for sweeping balls. But yeah, we'll move on to Rasmus Hojlund, who's the latest signing, but he won't actually. It doesn't seem like he'll be playing the opening couple of games. He seems like an exciting player. Yusuf, I'll start with you. Like, what would you say Hojlund will bring to United when he eventually gets onto the pitch?
Right. So first of all, I'm going to be that guy and explain how to pronounce his name. So
Go
it's
on.
Hojlund. So not, the D at
Hojlund.
the end is like silent. You kind of
Silent.
hold the end for an extra second. So it's like Hojlund.
Okay. I probably
But
missed the video of him explaining it.
yeah,
Yeah, he
I
did
get really
explain it,
interested in
yeah.
funny things. I'm so OCD about pronunciations. So
Yeah,
um,
go on.
obviously, I wrote a scout report and published it on UD about Rasmus Hojlund. He is really exciting. I think one thing United fans have noticed about him, he is a monster physically already. And that, as a young striker, is kind of the best thing to have, in my opinion, because as a striker, it's such a kind of physical position, even compared to other positions, there's so much demand on you. So if you're a young striker, you've got that raw physicality that bodes very well for you. He's really fast. He's really strong. He's not quite Haaland level powerful, but he's a bit more coordinated. He looks a bit kind of smoother when he's running. I think the physicality is the thing you'll notice. He does have a real burst on him. It does tend to work really hard. At times, sometimes there's moments where you're like, okay, no, you need to go press here, or your press here needs to be more intense. But generally, he's a player who works really hard. Technically, he's got gifts. You can see that there is a good technical base there. He does need refinement, but he's not got a lot of experience at the top level. So that's fairly, expected. I think over the course of this season, we'll see him develop quite a lot. And I think it's next season where he's really going to explode.
Yeah, and one thing that I kind of thought about when he was having his first United interview was he really understood the differences between his roles when he was playing as a lone striker for his country and then when he was almost playing as the split strikers kind of thing that they had at Atalanta. He detailed kind of the different responsibilities which he had when he was playing on his own, maybe a bit more hold up than when he was wide, a bit more running the channels. Do you think that's a valuable kind of trait which not many people have picked up on yet, with like his kind of game intelligence potentially?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, his movement off the ball is really smart. We can see. I've watched even like when it comes to dropping, he has a good understanding of kind of when to drop, when to run the channels, when to kind of stay central. He's just very spatially intelligent, and again, that kind of tactical understanding that is really impressive for a 20-year-old. Because when you're a younger player, you're naturally going to be a bit more immature. You're not going to understand this stuff as well usually. So the fact he does understand it is a huge bonus. And I think the fact he does play as a lone number 9 for Denmark will help him a bit because he has obviously had really impressive performances for them. I watched that hat trick against Finland. That was really good. But if he can adapt between being a lone number 9 and front two number 9, really impressive, especially because on Twitter this week I saw the kind of idea floated around of a possible diamond in some games if we sign someone like Sofia Amrabat. And if we have a player then who can adapt to being in both a front two and then the next game but go back to being a lone 9, huge difference and huge asset.
Yeah, yeah, and obviously, like you touched on, he's a young striker. He's still got a lot to learn. Shez, how much of a risk do you think it actually is signing him for a lot of money and there will be a lot of expectation? Do you think he'll immediately hit the ground running, or do you think there will be a bit of a risk in the initial stages of his career at United?
Yeah, I think it's always a risk when you're signing a young player for obviously that amount of money as well. But I've always just said like we've got to be patient with him because he's not the finished article. He's still quite raw, and I just feel like if he does start well, then obviously like that's perfect for us. But even if he does start a bit slow, I still think he's going to offer things that let's say he doesn't score as many goals, he's still going to offer things like in terms of his involvement in build up, his ability to like drift wide, and help out other players. Like let's say if he drifts to the right hand side, he's going to help out Anthony a lot and Bruno Fernandes as well. Because Anthony at times I feel like he was a bit isolated, especially last season, and because obviously we didn't have that focal point, you know, up front leading the line, like these players suffered. So having Hojlund, like even that game you guys were just mentioning, was it against Finland? Like he's playing as a lone striker, but you wouldn't notice it because he does drop deep a lot, he does drift wide a lot, and then he's always getting involved as well. So especially at United as well, because we've seen that at times the striker position can be a bit of a graveyard shift. We don't create sometimes for the strikers, or they just don't see much of the ball at times. So yeah, I think it's very important that we be patient with him and then we kind of allow him to settle in as well. And obviously the injury thing as well, like it is what it is. Like we just got to be patient again. Like just let him slowly come into the team. And I don't think we should have been expecting him to come in and start every game anyway. We've got Rashford there, and I think Rashford will play a couple of games like at centre forward. And obviously depending on Martial, I mean that's my guy, but I don't know what's going on with his fitness. Yeah, so depending on who's available, I guess. But I think there'll definitely be a lot of rotation, and yeah, I think it's just about being patient with him. I think it's a risk. It's always going to be a risk when you're signing a player for like what 60, 70 million, but he has a lot of potential, and we know how high his ceiling is. So I think it's a risk, but it's going to be worth it, I think.
I think to very quickly expand on your point about not creating for the striker too, I think, and whilst he is obviously fantastic and scores so many goals, our creation at times is still a bit too Rashford focused. So I think having Hojlund on the pitch, another kind of player who demands that you create for him, will actually balance our play a bit better. And this is not to say don't create for Rashford. Obviously, he's still our main goal scorer. He will still be our main goal scorer this season, even when Hojlund is playing. But having another kind of real goal threat just balances it out a bit more. And I think we saw this in one of the preseason games. I think it was I think it was Dortmund actually. Yeah, we first half played a really balanced game, really good performance. Second half we came on. We're just looking for Rashford at every opportunity, and you're kind of thinking, guys, balance it out a little bit, please. So
Mm.
having a player who demands that you create for him will balance our play better, I think.
Yeah, and also adding on to kind of the point that he doesn't necessarily have to be amazing in his first season to improve United. I mean, I think people forget that the first couple of months after Wout Weghorst joined the club on loan, he wasn't amazing. He wasn't great. He was barely good. But just having the striker there to take away the centre backs, to do the run in, which he did do well during his time at the club, it helped United in different ways. And obviously, the longer he stayed, he didn't score enough, and it kind of went downhill a little bit. But those initial couple of months, I think that it did show that he had a positive impact, and that was a low end Premier League striker. In Hojlund, we're getting a player who's probably towards the top end, not quite at the top, but he can get there. And if he's starting slow, I still think just having that body there who can make those runs that you expect of a natural centre forward will help United, even if he's not playing amazing. But
Even
yeah,
even
we'll
if he
move.
scores
Oh,
like
go on.
even if he scores like 6 or 7 goals in the Premier League, that's already probably an improvement. I know Ronaldo got maybe 2, and then Martial maybe got 4, I think. So even if he
Yeah,
gets
something
about
like that.
7, yeah, that's already an improvement on what our strikers got last season.
You're right.
Yeah, and you'll have Rashford who can, like you said, can kind of move from the left and go up front when he needs to. So there's, although it would be good to get another striker to have the Hojlund as backup to, I think it still can work out quite well.